But first and foremost, the Spurs come off spring break. They spent a couple of days in Austin, going up and down 6th Street, hitting Guadalupe, and doing all the cool stuff. They are back home. They look pretty good. Wemby had another historic night, and here come the very hot Dallas Mavericks. In prep for that, Brian Windhorst, the lamprey to LeBron James, below these many years, interviewed who's the Spurs the ESPN embed reporter for the Spurs? What's his name?
Andrew Lopez.
Andrew Lopez. Good guy. Very, very good guy. And very talented. You know, he came over. See, the ESPN sent him to New Orleans back when they drafted Zion. And Zion was such an absolute bust that they realized he ain't going to be what we thought he was going to be. So Andrew Lopez, their ace embed reporter, was then sent to San Antonio to be, you know, the eyes and ears in the building for ESPN as this Wemby thing grows. Windhorst was a part of the LeBron growth. He witnessed in the early years how Tim kind of became, and prior to that, there was David. The discussion that Lopez and Wemby were having about how the Spurs, they've been here before, but they really haven't been here before. Listen to this.
The thing about the Spurs is they are sort of viewed as sort of the repository of all the wisdom in the NBA. Like for 15 or 17 years now, these teams are constantly hiring away their executives, hiring away their assistant coaches to try to replicate what they have. You know, they go back to the Oracle, R.C. Buford, their team president, you know, whenever they get into a prickly position. He's sort of the arbiter of wisdom and intelligence, and all that's fair and true. But I respectfully, the Spurs are in a position they've never been in before. And that position is to how to build this team around Victor. And I think it's going to be hard. As hard as it is to build anything, obviously it's hard to build any team from nothing. I mean, you don't get the number one pick by being good. They're obviously still terrible, and they didn't think they were going to be this bad.
Brian Windhorst, Andrew Lopez, yesterday. Let's give credit. What's the podcast?
The Hoop Collective.
It was on the Collective. Okay. I'm glad we stopped it right there. Wendy.
Is he wrong?
No, I think Wendy is giving. Well, I don't think he's entirely right, but he ain't wrong. But he's given some space to the Spurs. Because, you know, we look at the Spurs and we go, man, how hard could it be? Look at him. I mean, how hard could it be? You've got somebody. He's worth 3 guys. It's like the tush push. The Eagles only have to go 9 yards. That's all they ever have to do. The Spurs, they're already 5. You know, they're already 9 yards into a first down with this guy.
Yeah, but if he's worth 3 guys, then that means you have to do the work for 3 guys. You don't just get to do the work for one dude and let him pick up the slack for you. I mean,
exactly. And this is where the Spurs find themselves. They're not a good team, and they're not nearly as good as they expected. But Wemby is so good, they're going to have to accelerate their plan. But how fast should they accelerate is the answer, is the question, really.
It's so hard in life to adjust on the fly.
It is.
And obviously in different sectors and elements of life that rings true in different ways. And this is kind of like building an airplane while you're flying, like while you're in the air. And we're about to see, to Wendy's point, the Spurs tested in a way that they never have been. Because you're right. I mean, Wemby is so much better than could have ever possibly been conceived, which is crazy to think about. And so they're not good enough. Like, their plan was not good enough. And that's okay, because you couldn't anticipate this, but you cannot rest on your laurels now. And that has been the primary message, the primary emphasis of everything that we've been talking about for months now. And there's nothing they can do to change it right now. And we were willing to excuse them not doing anything at the trade deadline. But the most important few months in Spurs franchise history are about to be upon them. And what they do or do not do is going to potentially shape legacies, their own included.
Now, here's some good news. The Spurs are stocked for battle. They are ready for war. They have every possible analogous thing for things that are coming. Listen, this is Wendy and Lopez talking about what the Spurs are doing and modeling in preparation for what's coming.
Right now, if you were to bring all the general managers into a room and say, what's the best way to do a rebuild? They would say Oklahoma City. And that is essentially kind of the model that the Spurs haven't announced this, but the Spurs aren't going to rebuild through free agency. They're not going to, be able to count on, getting a player in this draft where they're going to very likely have a top 4 pick. There's not going to be a player in this draft, at least as we look at it right now, that like, oh my gosh, they're going to draft a number 2. Maybe they do get lucky that way, but you can't say that. Basis of Oklahoma City's rebuild was trading Paul George. And that's how they got their franchise superstar. Now, it does look like the Spurs have their franchise superstar, but I'm not sure that there is a asset on this team that is going to be able to get necessarily a ready-made number 2. Now, you may debate me on that because of their picks, but I don't know how valuable their picks are going to be, and they have not shown a willingness to really trade their picks.
Windhorst and Lopez looking forward. Okay, so the Spurs, by their definition, are facing a different paradigm than in the past. And I appreciate the comparison to Oklahoma City because they did build and they traded appropriately. But I think if you want to compare them, you have to compare where Oklahoma City sat after the Paul George trade. Once they got Shai Gilgeous in, once Shai Gilgeous landed, that's where the Spurs are in the process that Oklahoma City went in. Not before, not with the trade. When they landed Shai Gilgeous and they saw the guy work out for the first time and said, bingo, okay, here he is. We got the guy we've been chasing. We have our star. Now what do we do?
But they had the capital, and that's why I do think it's fair to start the conversation pre-Paul George trade, because that's when the decision was made that, like, okay, we've got to adjust what we're doing here. Like,
right.
And they admittedly took one step backwards to take 500 steps forward. I think and Wendy could certainly speak to this better than either of us, but like the proper comp is probably LeBron and Cleveland. You have to find a way with a because look, Shai's amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, this is a different era of player. Not that Wemby is LeBron, like, not to launch these discussions, but like, you have to find a way to build around somebody who is so evidently not just great and elite for his age, but going to be even greater and a leader over the course of his entire career. And you cannot think about the idea, like, knowing what we know now, of wasting a season with LeBron. Like you know what I'm saying? Like think about looking back over the course of the last 20 years and any team justifying not pushing all the chips in all the time with LeBron James on their roster. We will look at Wemby the same way. We will look at this and say, I can't believe that they just threw away that first year. And so it's not comparable to Oklahoma City in my mind because they don't have the ammunition that the Thunder did.
I beg to differ as far as the draft picks, because while this year they've got a couple, but we don't really know what's going to go on with Toronto. But think about what's going to happen next year, because next year the draft looks entirely different. And there's a couple of guys that are there that, while they're not Wemby's a once in a decade guy. Or maybe more than that. There are guys that will be difference makers, guys like Cooper Flagg and the Boozer twins. There are guys that are coming up that we do expect to be able to make a difference. And while the getting them is one thing, but the access they will have, the number of picks they will have appropriate to that draft in 25 it's crazy. They got 3 possibilities. They got 3 number ones coming up next year. So there are going to be teams chasing that. So while Wendy goes, well, I don't think they have the capital to go get a star. Yes, they do. It just is about a year from now. Now, that means they can wait and see how it goes and get a younger guy. But at the same time, they do have a little bit of time, and we've got an improving player. Now, the paradigm on this is Oklahoma City, and don't let it get lost on the guy that's doing it is a former Pop acolyte. I mean, Wendy talked about how the Spurs ideas have been spread around the league. They're copying one of the guys that left.
I just think that's such a reckless is too strong, but that's such a vanilla way to go about this. I mean, because you're talking about if matters work out for you.
No, there's no
year
if. I
from
got
now.
3 number ones. I'm going to
but
have them no
if-
matter what happens.
No, but there are several ifs because you don't know where those number ones land. You don't know what the landscape of the NBA draft looks like next year, as much as you think you might know now. You know what I mean? And then you don't know, no matter who it is, no matter what the landscape is, how that player is going to translate, not just in general, but in their first year specifically. So you're talking about by the time you're in Wemby's third year, you're relying on his superstar help being
No,
a rookie.
we're already talking about what I'm talking about is we have the capital to make moves that Wemby isn't giving credit for. I think those moves are going to directly apply to this offseason. I think there will be a star arrive this offseason because there's more capital than Wemby's given the Spurs credit for. There's more here than he gave. Now,
so you're saying that they have the capital-ish, just without the.
They got enough right now to bring Trey in. Trey Young could be a Spur tomorrow. And the capital given up is so far in distance, the Spurs won't even notice it. They got enough to do it, is what I'm getting at. Don't listen to Wemby. But what I'm worried about is, do the Spurs understand where they are? Do you think they get the fact that things are fast forwarded now? That we all see it, despite their plan, which has been successful in the past, which, when they got David, they had time to prepare because he was going off to the Navy. So they had a couple of years they were allowed to suck and they could go get pieces and parts, and nobody even talked about hurry and win. And then when he showed up, and then when they got Tim, they had tanked, so they still had David. So this is the fixed time. And while they've been here before, they have managed to put things together given a couple of years. I think that the rush to make a move for Trey Young, I think we need to slow down a little bit because
I completely disagree.
Players play longer. I think Wemby was brought in with the intent of, look, man, we're only going to put you in the game 25 minutes a game on average if you're lucky. So we're looking long term here. I think that we've sped up, but there are difference maker draft picks that are coming around the bend that are worthy of consideration, even though Trey Young is a bird in the hand.
That's too much time. I mean, you don't have to waste that time. You don't have to do it that way. I think that the expression is don't let good be the enemy of great. And that's my concern for the Spurs. And my concern for the Spurs is they're going to let history dictate how they do this because of how successful they've been. And nobody's knocking that. Nobody's saying that was wrong or they lucked into it. It was a beautiful, incredible, amazing plan that worked out to the tune of, the franchise that we know it to be today. But you cannot apply the exact same principles. That's my fear, is that they let good be the enemy of great in that sense, that they're just chasing great. You can be really good right now, and that can work out. You don't have to just suck and tank and keep doing this over and over and over again and throw. Wemby's playing like a player who can help you win titles now. I know that's an extravagant thing to say, but he is. And certainly as soon as next year, after another season, and obviously the Olympics and everything under his belt, it would be categorically irresponsible to not bring in somebody who is a tried and true superstar to pair with him to contend for the playoffs at the very least because by the time you get all this together and you feel comfortable, it's like, okay, now let's chase. Now let's do it. Like, what if you get bounced in the first round? Well, what if you have an off week in the playoffs? Like, you have no idea none of this is a guarantee. You can't just this isn't NBA 2K where you can make your team rating 99 overall and guarantee a win in any series at any moment in time. What if somebody gets injured? What if anything happens? You cannot just constantly live in fear of hypotheticals.
But how much of this is predicated on Wemby's wants?
Everything.
Well, so what if Wemby comes to you and you say, look, I'm going to go get you Trey Young. And he said, I don't want to play with Trey Young.
Okay, well, then I say, okay, here's the list of options.
See what I'm saying? I get it. And I wonder how much you trust the star to play a role in his future, despite the fact he's a 20-year-old guy.
I think you certainly trust him with his opinions and his general wants and wishes. But you also, we brought up LeBron a little while ago. Look, LeBron's a horrible GM, right? Like you don't let Wemby completely dictate your decisions, especially at this age. We're talking 10 years down the road. Certainly, obviously, as he advances in his career, Wemby's voice becomes all the more prominent. But you can't let him say, Trey Young stinks, get him out of here. You've got to measure everything in the entire evaluation.
as we get to the end of the season, if he throws out another game like this, like he had last, and we keep seeing the superlatives, I'm trying to figure out what the heat of the Wemby moment will mean to the Spurs and how long they're going to take this. Because
I
tonight
think they're going to take it like this is going according to plan. We
Right.
knew Wemby would be great, and that's the concern.
And if he offers another one of these, I mean, if we get another, a Wemby, another 5-box filler and a 4-box near double, I feel like the heat is turning up, and the kind of game we're getting tonight. The reason I ask, it's only on Bally. This is only on Bally.
That's what it says.
You know, I mean, it's only there. We're getting to a point where I think the networks are going to start picking things up because of things he's doing, and they can't afford not to broadcast it. I don't know how much flexing is possible, but
on that note, I wonder how much of all this is impacted by the NBA themselves, right? Like,
yes,
hey,
and that's where I'm getting.
you
You gotta have to win, right?
Yeah,
you can't just follow your process. The league has their own schedule. You're going to Paris. We're putting you front and center. And I mean, tonight, I can't imagine. Can you imagine next year that there's a Wemby Luka matchup and it's not on TV? I mean, it's not on. Not the nation has to watch it through cracked streams or their massive NBA package buy. This is Luka Wemby. It's going to be spectacular. We haven't even thrown in Kyrie,
right?
A team that just knocked off the best
Trey
team
Jones.
in the West.
Please put some respect on.
And Trey Jones will get an opportunity to bring himself back into the good graces of the morning huddle. Looking around the league, Edwin and I were talking in the break about the Celtics. The Celtics are so much better than any team in the East. And I'm not sure they're good enough to win it all. But if they don't win it all this year, what do we say about Jason Tatum? Does he become Carmelo? Because
I mean, yeah, I think if they don't win it all, you say they're the victim of circumstance. You know what I mean? That's tough, but that's sports sometimes, right? Like this. What do you say about, the San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan? It's like you're the victim of circumstance. You're Patrick Mahomes.
Well, the highest paid player in the league right now is Jaylen Brown, and Tatum deserves more. I don't see how that. I don't know what they're going to do over the summer.
It's tough. I mean, Tatum is. There aren't a lot of dudes like that, and
yeah.
So you've got to make all this work, and it becomes easier if you have a title.
$600 million tied up into two dudes.
It's wild.
And so watching what Boston did, and hey, congratulations to Derek White last night. I mean, they're so much better. What was this, like the 4th, 5th, 6th game they've beaten somebody by 25 points? They've beaten teams by 53 times. I mean, when they get rolling, and last night was one of those we're rolling kind of games, and it dawned on me as I watched them go. I'm not sure even at this point they can beat Denver.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, I'm starting to get a little worried as we talk about it because they also kind of, like, in that respect, they feel like they're just peaking too early. You know what I mean? Like, not that they're a first-round exit, but, like, they get bounced in the semis, and you're just like, what happened? They were crushing all these teams. It's like, well, they wore themselves out. I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking.
If you haven't seen it.
Oh, dude. I know where you're going.
Go find the Anthony Edwards dunk last night on John Collins of the Jazz. I've seen dunks. I've seen embarrassing dunks. I've never seen a dunk where the recipient left with a concussion or symptoms of, and the giver left with a hand that hit the rib so hard he had to have a finger reset. It was soul-snatching, the best dunk of the year.
I don't think anybody thinks this is embarrassing, to be clear.
Makes it. I mean, it's part of life.
But that's actually what makes it more embarrassing. Is that, like, the whole world is like, oh, dude, what could you do?
Now, I will put it to you that on this night, that John Collins will be remembered on the ground holding his head while slow-mo. Was that slow-mo that was standing beside him? Was it?
I think so.
I'm gonna show the replay.
Number one for the Wolves, if that's slow-mo, holds his head in utter shock and awe watching his teammate go over. That went on, but at the same time, did you see Cam Johnson yam on Austin Reeves? Go look at that one. I'll put it to you that one was more embarrassing.
The photo is more because I'm looking at these photos. The Athletic tweeted them out side by side. The photo of that one is more. The photo specifically is more embarrassing.
Of Austin
But
Reeves getting a little nutmeg action.
But the ant one is more like grown man dunk. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where the difference is. Like it's just the geometric positioning of the Cam one that makes it awkward.
Look
But
at slow-mo in the replay. I don't care about the dunk. Go back and watch the reaction from his own teammate. Holy cow. That's worse. Although Austin Reeves, I saw a little bit of post-game of him laughing about it. But if you can go watch either, I don't know who had worse. We should put a poll up because one was brutal and one was pretty funny between the two. Tonight, Spurs taking on, I haven't called it. I don't think they're going to win tonight. I think the Mavericks are they have to find a rhythm to get themselves into the playoffs, and they're playing pretty well. It's going to be awfully difficult to duplicate what they did. And I'm not talking about the offensive side of things. It's the defensive part of the things that bother me tonight. I think that the turnovers and their ability to stop one-on-one basketball players like Luka and Kyrie, they've had trouble all season long. And for whatever reason, Kid has defensed Wemby pretty well. His averages are below his regular across the board against the Mavericks. So I don't think they're going to duplicate what they did against Brooklyn up there in Austin, but I do expect another Wemby-esque, a return to what Wemby's been capable of, and that'll be a moral victory, if anything, tonight. And Trey Jones is going to let us down.
Dude, this is embarrassing now. I mean, just say something nice about it. I want him honestly.
I want him to. No, he's if he gets the assignment and he's alone, it's going to be it will be a long night.
Man, no respect from you whatsoever. Again, you throw out flowers left and right for whatever for just putting their shorts on. Trey, meanwhile, plays his heart and soul out, and Rob Thompson just can't say anything nice.